Rob Bates, an incredible double whammy of data out today. First of all is the jobless figures. An incredible amount of jobless. 21.5% of all unemployed people in the UK now born overseas. But here's the bigger question. What does this all cost us? Robert Bates, what is the astonishing bill to the British taxpayer?
Well, I'm very grateful that the DWP has finally decided to actually publish this data, because what it really reveals is the sheer costs that for too long the open border advocates have been trying to deny. What we are seeing now is really the data of the last 12 months, that the British taxpayer has been forced to stump up roughly between the remit of 11 billion and 15 billion pounds a year to cover the universal credit claims of people that are not even citizens of this country. This is effectively money that has been thrown down the drain, and there has been no benefit from paying this money to the British taxpayer. I think the other statistics that came out today on the ONS showing that 1 in 5 foreign nationals account for 1 in 5 of those that are unemployed also reflects the sheer fact that our mass migration system has really been centred around importing low-wage, low-skilled individuals who actually offer very little to the British economy. And I think really now we're at a point where there is no arguing with these statistics. 1.3 million people claiming universal credit is a staggering number. And I think the question now has to be asked is, how do we solve this? And I think there needs to be a conversation about whether we start beginning to scrap indefinitely to remain, we start beginning to assess the settlement status of some individuals that have that indefinitely to remain, and try and do as much as we can to reduce the burden on the British taxpayer.
Jonathan Portes, the figures are eye-popping. This is unsustainable. Today's figures adding further fuel to that fire. We simply can't afford this.
Well, what today's figures show, and you're right, they do tell us quite a bit, is that people born abroad, people who originally migrated to this country, are more likely to be in work than Britons. That's true of people coming from the EU, and it's true from people born outside the EU. So in both cases, they are more likely to be in work than Britons. And we also know from other data that on average, both people from the EU and people from outside the EU have slightly higher salaries than people born in this country. And we also know from the data that they're slightly less likely to be claiming benefits. So the question of who pays in more and who takes out more is, as you say, clearly answered by the data. On average, migrants contribute slightly more. They're slightly more likely to be in work. They have slightly higher salaries. They're slightly less likely to be claiming benefits. That's what the data shows. It's what I said several months ago. So the overall equation is absolutely clear. Now, we know that some people like Robert Bates want to deport people who've settled here, who've made their lives, who are contributing to the UK economy, and we know perfectly well why that is. But we should be absolutely clear on the bottom line here, Martin, because you're the one who was talking about the bottom line and about knowing who pays in, who's paying the bills, and who's getting the benefits. And the overall bottom line is quite clear. Is it the case, Robert, you've seen the data from today, is it the case that people born outside the EU are more likely to be, if they're of working age, are more likely to be in work than people born in the UK? Simple question.
Rob Bates.
Well, first of all, I think it takes a lot of humility for Jonathan to come back on this show and discuss these figures, given how horrifically wrong he was when we first debated this.
Can you actually, for once...
So, Jonathan, 1 in 5 people in the country...
Jonathan Portes, Jonathan, let Rob Bates answer the question. Rob Bates.
1 in 5 people in this country are unemployed foreign nationals. They constitute about 16% of the working age population. That, by my rough calculations, and granted I'm not a professor of economics at King's College University, but by my calculations that's an overrepresentation in the statistics. And of course, let's look as well at some of the other claims that you made, where you said that foreign nationals were disproportionately likely to be claiming universal credit. That is an absolutely ridiculous claim to be making.
Gentlemen, one at a time.
Robert, a very simple question.
I answered it.
Jonathan, let's not start a shouting contest. People at home simply can't hear. Rob Bates, the question was quite straightforward in terms of the numbers. Is it more likely? But also, let's talk about the types of people paying in. We all know, for example, that those from Australia, from America, from Switzerland, from Malta, from Cyprus, they pay India, a huge amount in, but that's not the same. That's not the same as those from Afghanistan, from Eritrea. Well. Rob Bates,
So what Jonathan is citing when it comes to the wages being paid by migrants is he's looking at the overall population of Britain aged 16 to 64 versus just those foreign nationals and migrants that are actually in work. So he's comparing, as happens a lot, apples and pears. So that's a completely bogus claim that I'd advise your users to just disregard. And then when you consider the benefits claimants, which Jonathan is very, very deftly trying to avoid conversing about here, 1.3 million foreign nationals, Jonathan, are claiming universal credit alone in this country. And that's before we get into the other benefit types. You've previously described that as fake news. I'd like to know whether you still stand by that description, because now we have actual DWP data. Is that still your view that it's fake news to describe 1.3 million foreign nationals claiming benefits? What do we get for that money, Jonathan?
Do you want to save a boatload of cash this summer, wherever you have a trip planned? The one thing you're going to need is access to the internet and on the go. And you can do that easily with Saley. Hit the link in the description to get 15% of your first eSIM plan ready for your trip so you can browse to your heart's content. Saley gets you a local SIM card you can use when traveling so you don't have to pay those crazy roaming fees just to send a message or check the latest news. Now, they've got plans in over 160 countries, 8 regions, so pretty much everywhere, wherever you're going, they'll be able to make sure you're connected. So how does it work? All you've got to do is this. Hit the link in the description to download the app. It will work on iOS or Android. Buy a plan. You can choose an amount of data and time frame that suits you best. And then just install the eSIM on your phone. When you land at your holiday destination, you can activate your plan instantly. And if that wasn't enough, Saley eSIMs only ever have to be installed once. So when you go on your next trip, you just buy a plan for a new country, turn that eSIM back on, and boom, you're back watching me on GB News. I'll be using a Saley SIM on my next holiday because it's actually faster than some of the hotel Wi-Fis. You can get unlimited data if you want, so you can scroll away to your heart's content. And when you leave the hotel, you don't have to do that annoying thing of Wi-Fi hopping because you've got constant connectivity wherever you go. And they've got 24/7 support as well and a full refund policy if your eSIM isn't compatible. So get sorted for your next trip. Download Saley using the link in the description below. And if you use the code NEWS at checkout, you'll get an exclusive 15% discount on us. So click the link, download Saley, and use the code NEWS at checkout.
I note once, so let me be very clear. I asked Robert a simple question, whether he had read today's data, which
I answered.
Very clearly.
Wait. No, Jonathan, I've answered that very clearly.
Let me finish.
Let Jonathan go.
Can I finish? Robert did not answer the question of whether non-UK nationals, whether they're from the EU or outside the EU, both groups are more likely to be in work than UK people who were born in the UK. So people who are born in the outside the EU, people who are born inside the EU, more likely to be in work. Slightly more likely to be unemployed, but much more less likely to be inactive. So that's why Robert, of course, is trying to mislead you.
Well, no, the point is, Jonathan, of course, as we well know, Jonathan, there's a huge problem in terms of the British population as a control for successive governments, albeit the DWP in a large part has been the fault of this. I'm aware that you previously worked there as well, has created a situation where we have a large number of Brits economically inactive. I'm not disputing that. My argument is there should not be a single foreign national in this country of working age who is not pulling their weight, who is not making a contribution. Otherwise, why are they here? That's my point, Jonathan. Can you address why we have over 1 million people that were born overseas and hold a citizenship of another country not working? What's the point of them being here?
So let me answer that. But first, just let me once again make clear that Robert has refused once again to state what was in today's figures, which was that people born outside the UK are more likely to be in work, less likely to be inactive, and on average, even though more of them in work, are also likely to have slightly higher salaries. So, of course, the overall
we discussed
balance...
that, Jonathan. You're comparing apples and pears with that. But can you address the question, why is it acceptable for there to be over 1 million foreign nationals in this country not working? What's the point of it? What's the benefit to the British public?
I just want to
No, answer that one, please.
Wait, let's see. The apples and pears point, yes, they're more likely to be in work and they're paying slightly higher wages. So overall, of course, the balance is clear. You're a bit confused here. I understand that. That's because you don't really understand the data.
Now answer the question, mate. 1 million people not contributing. What's the point of them? That's his question. Answer it.
Well, first of all, of course, there's 2 points here. Quite a lot of those people on universal credit, whether they're British or foreign, are, of course, in work. So that's the second point.
But most of them aren't, of course. Most of them aren't, of course. of the
yes,
1.3 million, over half aren't working. So again, let's just fact check Jonathan Portes, as seems to be becoming my hobby. Let's just clarify the facts here, Jonathan, and make sure that we're aware that over half of those claiming universal credit aren't in work.
Wait. I did fact check you and make clear that of course some of them in work, not all of them are in work. That's quite true. But since you've got the facts wrong on the numbers who are in work and how much they're earning, which is the main point about whether they're making more of a contribution than the average.
759,375,000 foreign nationals, Jonathan Portes, are out of work.
I was just coming to that, Martin. Let me
go on then, mate. We haven't got all night.
Yes. So first of all, the substantial majority of those are actually not people who arrived in the last few years, because the vast majority of those people are people who qualified under the EU settlement scheme. That is, the reason that they have the status which allows them to claim benefits is, first of all, that we are members of the EU, and second of all, the Brexit deal, which guaranteed them those rights in perpetuity, a deal which, of course, was very much supported by GB News. So the main reason...
I was waiting for this to be the fault of Brexit. I was waiting. I've got the full house.
Yes, but you're not denying that that's the case. I mean, we can see the data, right? I have the data.
Yeah, and the EUSS was a absolute catastrophic decision. It was the May wave, to coin a phrase. Let's talk about the Boris wave when we look at the number of non-EU citizens that are beginning to claim universal credit when it comes to indefinite leave to remain. We've seen a 40% leap in people on settled status, indefinite leave to remain, claiming universal credit in the last year alone. And this is before we've even got to the point where Boris Johnson's migration policy and those that arrived under that policy are beginning to claim settled status. We are sitting on a sleeping time bomb here, and things are very, very precarious.
If I could try and explain the facts, because having pointed out the thing which neither of you wanted to point out, which is the vast majority of the people who are claiming universal credit who were originally foreign nationals are in fact people who were given that right by the Brexit deal.
I'm sure that makes the British taxpayer feel a lot better.
We have established that. But of those, both in that group and the people who got it because they have at one point had indefinite leave to remain. Again, these people, that is their status when they claim benefit. So a substantial proportion, again, we do not know how many, but remember the EU settlement scheme came in 5 years ago. Substantial proportion of those people will now be British citizens. Now, I know Robert Bates would be quite happy deporting Brits who are of the wrong colour, but I think most of us would not. And again, that's
if you're talking about the EU settlements, I mean, you're going down this weird tangent, which you always seem to do. You're obsessed with this on Blue Sky, you and the Sunders of the world.
Guys, we have to leave it. Just a quick fact check on you there, Jonathan Portes, to end off. The worst offenders are non-EU on 242,147 who are out of work, and then it's EU residents 103,242. So I'm afraid you've been fact-checked. To close this off again. No, I haven't, Jonathan Portes. It's out there. It's the ONS official data for unemployment.
You have the data right in front of me, Martin.
Log on to the ONS. There are two reports out today, one on universal credit, one on unemployment. I just told you the facts. Go and Google it. Thank you, Jonathan Portes. Always a pleasure. And also Robert Bates. We told you to get live. He's beautiful.